A continent of 55 sovereign states with a population of 1.4 billion people, the origin of mankind and endowed with natural resources. Politically, though, the absence of democracy and stability, supplemented by corrupt practices, which is nurtured by foreign actors, still lets the continent to be known by its lost opportunities. The continent of Africa. The seed of conquering and dividing is not yet over. Coup d'etat is one of the malpractices which lets many countries not to have stable governments. Why has Africa plunged under coups? Hello and welcome to ETV World. I'm Tabitha John. In this program, we will examine why and how Africa is in the trap of coups. Do stay with us. Military coups are rolling back Africa's development and democracy. Complex and devastating crisis has emerged as a result. Coups, according to scholars, are an attack on the fate of generation while hampering development, and on the contrary, it is an act of survival of the plotters. According to sources, of 486 attempted or failed coups, African states have experienced over 214 military takeovers between the 1950s and 2012. All of African nations, 45 of them, have had at least one coup attempt. Many analysts believed that coups were going out of fashion in Africa by 2015 due to limited cases on the continent. At present, however, coups are widely seen to be on the rise or dangerously back in fashion in Africa, as some countries such as Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Mali, Chad, Sudan, and Burkina Faso have experienced a series of successful and failed military takeovers over the last 3 years. Apart from the failed attempts to overthrow Guinea-Bissau's current president, Umaro Sissoco Embalo, on 1st February 2022, Burkina Faso's most recent successful coup, in which President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore was deposed by an army led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba on 24th January 2022, underscores how West African states are most burdened by military coups on the continent. This has raised several concerns in the sub-region and questions the relevance of regional organizations, the Economic Community of West African States, the ECOWAS, with respect to the maintenance of peace and security in West Africa. Several reasons have been given for coups in Africa, including modernization, lack of cultural pluralism, greed, and grievances for power, corruption, autocracy, limited economic growth, and low-income levels, among others. Robin Luckham claims that disparate political systems inherited from Europeans have led to military coups in Africa. This claim was debunked several decades ago by Alan Wells and William Tardoff. Also, political and socioeconomic factors such as corruption and poor governance in Africa are sometimes discussed as though they do not exist in other parts of the world. Scholars in the area advance a twofold argument while addressing reasons behind coups in Africa. First, they argue that military coups in Africa are best understood through the lens of neocolonialism. Second, they highlight how military overthrows, even though they are not desirable in most states, are a continuation of politics by other means. Neocolonialism is also visible in how former colonizers, including France and Britain, have undermined Africa's political stability through coups until the end of the 20th century, given the long-standing link between foreign powers and insecurities in Africa. One cannot ignore the involvement of both local and foreign actors in the current waves of military coups in Mali. In this vein, Burkina Faso's Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba cited the failure of the country's ousted president, Roch Kabore, to contain violence by Islamic militants as a key reason why military had to stage the most recent coup in this West African state, which occurred in January 2022. while the tenure of military regimes that assume political power through coups may be short-lived and not under constitutional rule, they take full control of states during their time in office, just as democratically elected governments do. For that end, African politicians need to transform their understanding of political leadership and how to relate to the local population in a more relevant way to limit coups in the region. It is better to overcome the continent from coup belt to the continent of better development by popular participation of the entire population. The efficacy and resilience of democracy can flourish by visionary leaders and by accepting and implementing basic principles of democracy as well as term limits. The AU's Constitutive Act inhibits unconstitutional overthrow of government, yet failed to condemn the unconstitutional amendments of term limits. This is political default and has far-reaching debacles on the fate of upcoming generations who are currently suffering as a result of unemployment. Injustice committed against Africans cannot be rectified by supporting injustice as well. Africans and Africa don't deserve coups in the 21st century. Rather, visionary leaders and practical policies has to be endorsed to ensure a bright future of the continent by utilizing its endowed human and natural resources. And by this, we conclude our program, and goodbye for now. Thank you for watching.